So the PLOS One inspired impact neutral model, which you can see why they call it megajournals instead. There's such a mouthful. Yeah, I think it is. It's one of the most disruptive things to have hit the scholarly publishing system in the last 50 years. In the last 50 years, peer review was invented, or at least formalized. Online journals happened, obviously, in the 1990s. PLOS One is very recent, 2006. But I think PLOS One has the potential to have perhaps the biggest change going forwards, or at least the PLOS One inspired model. Basically, it has now created, I think, a fundamental change in attitude towards publication amongst academics, publishers. It's got the real potential to bring about a huge improvement in the speed and efficiency of the ecosystem, and this is the ecosystem of academia, but also of publishing. It's done things like it's created article-level metrics. There was no need for article-level metrics, really, until something like PLOS One happened, where you've got such a large amount of content that has no sort of value indicator that's been placed on it yet. And potentially, it signals the end of the journal. So, although we're talking about, sort of the leading edge of the development of the publishing world, it could actually, we could take another step here. So, actually, with that said, with that sort of teaser, the end of the journal, I want to just take a quick side step, because no discussion about the economics of open access and the APC model would be complete without quickly talking about predatory journals. So I think the man on the right with the gun must be Jeffrey Beall, I think. But I don't know who the person on the left is. But predatory journals, of course, have been exposed by people like Jeffrey Beall, and has been recently delved into by the likes of Science with the Who's Afraid of Peer Review, the Bohannon Sting article, which, in many ways is a very deeply flawed study. So the problem with this study, and I'm not going to go into great depth about how bad it was, but it didn't do a control, basically. It sent its fake articles to a group of journals that it decided already were bad journals, accepted it in large numbers, and lo and behold, the lessons learned are then applied to the whole of the open access world. So control, you didn't send the same article to the subscription journals, for example. The good point is somebody else did. So somebody else has done the control for us. So this guy, Dietrich Stapel, is one of the most prolific, fabricators of articles. He's got over 50 retractions now. But he was basically fabricating his data and sending his articles to subscription journals. So subscription journals such as Science have already in the past been accepting fake journal articles. So they've done their own control for us. Nature's published the Arsenic Life paper and so on. But the point that I really want to make here is that the way to solve this, and this is really just an aside that I want to throw in because predatory journals comes up all the time now, open peer review would make this problem disappear. I mean, literally overnight. The reason predatory journals can get away with it is because, again, the historical approach towards publishing articles has been to keep the peer review process entirely anonymous and secret and private. It's not been made public, historically, by the subscription journals, and in partly that's because, again, it's an artifact of their model. They had a paper production. They printed, articles. Why would they waste space printing all of the workings as well, the peer review history, alongside the published article? And I think then the mindset has just grown up that that's the way to do peer review, anonymously in private with nobody ever seeing it. But there are now journals practicing open peer review. If you were to publish the peer reviews of your articles openly, then predatory journals could not get away with this concept of taking an article, publishing it, not having done any work on it, any peer review on it. And so here's a list, and this is almost a comprehensive list as far as I know of journals that do open peer review, of which there's only one on the list, which is a subscription journal, the EMBO journal. Everything else there is OA. And again, I guess this is an example of OA journals sort of being more innovative, leading the charge, meeting the demands of their marketplace better than historically the subscription journals. So let's go back then. So lessons from PLOS One and PeerJ. So I think the lessons here are your business model does affect how you do business. And your business model can be subscription, it can be APC, it can be a membership model like ours, but it has knock-on effects that you need to be aware of. Pick the right model, and here I'm thinking, a model without wastage. So a model such as the APC OA model, where you don't have to fund a rights and permissions department, a sales force, and so on, where you have an editorial model where you're not rejecting stuff that should be publishable and wasting everyone's time. So with the right model, your costs really aren't that high. I'm here to, as evidence from experiencing it in PLOS ONE and PeerJ, you can do it for an entirely reasonable price. And PLOS ONE's price is $1350, and there's a margin in there. There's a good margin in there because they're supporting a lot of good works, not-for-profit type of advocacy. They're cross-subsidizing PLOS medicine, biology, and so on. So PLOS ONE could be cheaper. The infrastructure itself is also not that expensive. You're not talking about warehousing and distributing and printing. You're talking about online services, which you can either build yourself, like we did, or buy them in. And in theory, some of those costs even go down every year. So we're on Amazon. All of our infrastructure, the entire assets of our company are 5 or 6 laptops. Everything is run off of the cloud. And those costs go down every year. So a couple of months ago, Google announced that its cloud service costs were going to undercut Amazon's by whatever it was, 40%. The next day, Amazon slashed their prices by 40%. Literally the next day. So our costs just improved dramatically. Our entire infrastructure costs for bandwidth, hosting, storage on Amazon are of the order of $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year. It's as little as that. It really is. So let's speculate now. So you've got an open access future now which contains mega journals. So this is already happening. We're moving towards open access. We have mega journals. Mega journals exist. They're putting a lot of content into the world. So you've got PLOS ONE, Springer Open, PeerJ. In this future, you've also got all other open access journals, which are a mixture of sort of not mega journals, but applying the editorial criteria of the non-selective criteria, but also open access journals such as PLOS Medicine that do apply some sort of selection criteria and therefore have some signal in their published content of how good or bad they thought it was. But effectively, all of those journals are now pumping, in the future, as much as 2 million articles a year into this sort of cloud of open access content. So, first of all, you can imagine that, well, how do you deal with that? A mixture of content that has no signal, no quality signal attached to it, and articles that do, all mixed together. And of course, you end up with services evolving, such as the article level metrics services, third-party peer review services. So straight away, this provides you an opportunity for new tools and services to poke into that content and do interesting. So you've got this cloud of content. And couldn't you start to think of that as just the ultimate bucket? So we talked about unbucketing. This really is just the ultimate bucket, isn't it? It's the bucket of academic content that exists in the world. And what if you start to think of this as that? This is just another bucket, effectively. So is the ultimate bucket, a future which contains no journals? Effectively, you've got this content that's out there being published, and you've got these services that can sort of poke into it. Peer review, third-party peer review can be done on that content. You can evaluate it. Article level metrics services can evaluate that content. Marketing and promotion as a service. There's already companies that are springing up to promote your open access articles on your behalf or on your university's behalf to try and game or increase your article level metrics. Archiving and registration, and Figshare is the best example here. There are other services that are evolving already that can be acting on this big sort of bucket of content that doesn't have to be done by the journal anymore. The journal has traditionally filled a certain number of criteria, archiving, registration, dissemination, and so on. But really, in the future, a lot of that is not necessary, especially when you start to look at it with this mindset. And people, I think, are already doing this. So, there's a sort of forward-thinking group of companies in my mind that have sort of seen the future and want to live there. and are preparing themselves today for that brave new world. And it's sort of been enabled in some way by PLOS ONE, which is why I put it up there in a different color. But there's now this sort of Cambrian explosion almost of new products such as Piaget, F1000 research, so new sort of journal-style products, but new services, Impact Story, Altmetric, Figshare, Rubric, Axios, companies that are positioning themselves for that future cloud of content, and what services can they build today that are going to act on that and work on that and be a serious commercial opportunity in the future. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. So in summary, so I think the business models, they do have a direct effect on the way you do business. And I've now worked in several of these business models, subscription, APC, the membership model, and I can start to see, the effects that just picking how you get paid can really affect the way you do business. In particular, the APC model means, you now treat the author as a customer, and that has some serious implications about tools and services and what a customer expects in this world. I think the OA plus APC model has just naturally led to PLOS ONE. I can really see a logical progression, and it would have happened. And people are already building tools and products for an all open future. And the next disruption, I really think, actually could be the end of the journal. And now we're talking out 10, 20 years, whatever. But I don't think the journal article itself is in danger. I think that's still a good unit of content that a human can get their head around, that a human can create. But I think the journal is an artifact of the history and the business models. I think the journal itself could be the thing that's really in danger out of the sort of open access. So that's a long-term, I don't think the journal's in danger in the next 5, 10 years. But in the next 5 years, so the short-term effects, I think, right now, that open access is about to rapidly displace the subscription. Really, that first graph we looked at, that's correct. It's happening. Every year you can see it. New and innovative businesses and business models are evolving already to take advantage of that future. And importantly, I think in this sort of near midterm, prices are going to come down. So there's a lot of debate about this at the moment. The Wellcome Trust put out their report. People are concerned about hybrid costs and so on. They're concerned that the subscription publishers are basically putting an APC fee of $5,000 on their articles, and you can see why. It's because they currently get $5,000 of revenue per article. But I think there's natural drivers in this marketplace, particularly the author as a customer concept, that are really going to drive those prices down, provided people are willing to compete on that basis. And we are, we've come in with a very low price point. There are journals doing the PLOS ONE model exactly at significantly cheaper. I think that's going to happen. Prices are going to come down and features will increase. And again, this is an interesting thing. You don't see subscription publishers really innovating around providing more features, more functionality, more services. You see the open access journals doing that, and typically for less and less money each year. It's some interesting effects that are going on there. That's it. Thank you very much.